An alien girl faced a cruel punishment until a human stepped in. Beat down mercilessly on the dusty marketplace of Drywell, the last outpost. Before the vast stretches of nothing that dominated the planet's surface, heat waves shimmered above the cracked ground, distorting the already bleak landscape into something even more hellish. Orza moved with practice. Stealth between the market stalls, her emerald skin darkened with dust and grime. The tattered beige rags that barely covered her slender frame helped her blend with the shadows cast by the makeshift awning's silver hair. Once lustrous but now dulled by days without washing, was tucked hastily beneath a dirty cloth wrap. Her violet eyes darted nervously between the water merchant's stall and the hulking guard who stood nearby. Thorax was notorious among the locals, a Hesperian native with mottled gray-red skin and a temper as hot as the planet itself. His crimson eyes missed nothing, and his punishment for thieves was legendary. But Oryx's father hadn't had water in 2 days. The fever that gripped him wouldn't break without hydration. The colony's medical center had turned them away. No credits, no treatment. It was as simple and brutal as that. Just one flask, she whispered to herself, just enough to keep him alive. Until tomorrow, the merchant turned to haggle with a wealthy off-worlder, his attention diverted just long enough. Iris slipped forward, fingers trembling as they closed around a small metal flask. The cool touch of it against her skin felt like salvation. She tucked it into the folds of her tattered minikit and turned to leave, only to find her path blocked by a wall of muscle and armor. Well, Thorax's voice rumbled like distant thunder. What do we have here? His massive hand clamped around her wrist with crushing force. Area gasped as he yanked her arm upward, the flask tumbling from her hiding place to land with a damning clatter on the dusty ground. Please, she begged, her voice barely audible over the sudden hush that fell across the marketplace. My father. Thieves get what thieves deserve, Thorax snarled, drawing a wicked look. Blade from his belt. The law's clear. You steal water, you lose the hand that took it. The crowd that had gathered maintained a respectful distance. No one intervened, no one ever did on Hesper 7. Water was more precious than any currency. Stealing it was tantamount to murder in the eyes of the locals. Thorax forced her to her knees, pressing her arm against a nearby wooden post. The blade glinted in the harsh sunlight as he raised it high. Stop. The voice cut through the marketplace like a plasma shot, authoritative, commanding, undeniably human. Thorax paused, blade still raised as a path cleared through the onlookers. A human male strode forward, his confident gait marking him as an off-worlder. His light brown hair was cropped short in a military style, and his muscular torso was bare save for a thin sheen of sweat that made his tan skin gleam in the sunlight. Dark grayish-green cargo pants hung low on his hips, secured with a utility belt laden with various gadgets and pouches. This doesn't concern you, human, Thorax growled, but there was a note of hesitation in his voice. The human's eyes a startling blue that reminded Orxa of the water pools in the sacred caves, locked with hers for a brief moment before returning to Thorax. I'm making it my concern, he said, his voice surprisingly calm. How much for the water? She took Thorax's grip on Axe's wrist, tightened painfully. The price is in the point. The law. 15 credits, the merchant called out from behind his stall. For the flask. The human reached into one of his belt pouches and pulled out a small credit chip. I'll pay 30.15 for the water. 15 for the inconvenience. He tossed the chip to the merchant, who caught it with greedy hands. The transaction complete, the human turned his attention back to Thorax. She's paid for. Let her go. For a tense moment, Oryxa thought Thorax would refuse. The guard's crimson eyes narrowed dangerously, and his grip didn't loosen. Then, with a disgusted grunt, he shoved her away. She stumbled, nearly falling face first into the dust before strong hands caught her shoulders. You off-worlders, Thorax spat, always thinking you can change our ways with your credits. Next time, human, I'll take your hand instead. The threat hung in the air as Thorax stalked away, the crowd dispersing in his wake. The human's hands remained steady on Eric's shoulders. Until she found her footing. "Thank you," she whispered, turning to face her savior. Up low, she could see the fine lines around his eyes, not from age, but from squinting against harsh suns on countless worlds. "Don't mention it," he replied, bending down to retrieve the water flask. He handed it to her with a casual gesture that belied the significance of what had just happened. Losing a hand over a drink seems a bit extreme even for a dust ball like this, or clutched the flask to her chest like a precious jewel. "Why are you helping me? You don't even know me." The human's lips quirked into a half smile that transformed his face, making him look younger, almost boyish, despite his imposing physique. "Because no one should suffer over a sip of water," he said simply, his intense blue eyes meeting her. Something passed between them in that moment, a connection that transcended their different species, different worlds. Area felt her heart skip a beat as she realized this stranger, this human, had just changed the course of her life. "I'm a Rixa," she offered, suddenly conscious of her filthy appearance. "Logan," he replied, extending his hand in the human custom of greeting. "Captain Logan Brant, formerly of the Earth Expeditionary Force, currently freelance courier and occasional good Samaritan." His hand engulfed hers, warm and callous, a warrior's hand, but gentle in his strength. "My father needs this water," she said, reluctantly breaking contact. "He's sick, and we shouldn't keep him waiting." Logan interrupted, gesturing for her to lead the way. "I'll walk with you." Thorax strikes me as the type to hold a grudge. Erica hesitated only briefly before nodding as they made their way through the winding alleys of Drywell. She couldn't help stealing glances at the human beside her. He moved with the easy confidence of someone accustomed to danger, his eyes constantly scanning their surroundings. "So," Logan said conversationally, "is water theft a regular hobby, or was today special?" Despite everything, Orxa found herself smiling. "First time, actually. I'm usually much more law-abiding. Good to know. I'd hate to think I've allied myself with a hardened criminal." His teasing tone made her laugh, a sound so foreign to her own ears that it startled her. How long had it been since she'd laughed? Since before her father fell ill. "Certainly, my father was a water prospector," she explained. As they navigated the narrow passages, "He found a new aquifer 3 months ago, but there was a cave and he managed to get out. But the dust damaged his lungs without proper medical care." She trailed off the reality of her situation, crashing back down. "And let me guess, proper medical care cost proper credits." Logan finished for her. Oryxa nodded. "Miserably. Everything on Hesper 7 comes down to water in the end. No water, no credits, no credits, no medicine." They reached a small dwelling carved into the rock face at the edge of the settlement. It was cool inside, at least compared to the blistering heat outside, but the air was stale and tinged with a sour smell of sickness. "Father," Erica called softly, hurrying to the still form lying on a thin pallet. "I brought water." The elderly Hesperian stirred weakly, his once vibrant emerald skin now pale and ashen, his silver hair the same shade as Eric's was thin and brittle. He opened his eyes, violet like his daughter's, and they widened at the sight of Logan standing in the doorway. "Who?" he managed before a coughing fit overtook him. "A friend," Oryxa said, helping him drink from the flask. "He helped me get this for you." Logan remained respectfully silent as the old man drank, watching the tender care with which Oryx attended to her father. When the flask was empty, the old man seemed marginally stronger, his eyes more focused. "Thank you, stranger," he said, his voice raspy but clear, "for helping my daughter." Logan inclined his head. "It was nothing. It was everything," the old man contradicted on. "Hesper 7 kindness is rarer than water." Another coughing fit seized him, and Eric's face creased with worry. Logan stepped forward, reaching into one of his belt pouches. He withdrew a small metallic object that Erixa didn't recognize. "May I?" he asked, gesturing toward the sick man. Area nodded hesitantly, and Logan knelt beside the pallet. The device in his hand hummed Softly as he passed it over the old man's chest, pulmonary fibrosis, Logan murmured, advanced but not beyond. Treatment, he glanced at Erixa. He needs proper medical attention, not just water. I know that, she said, a flash of frustration in her voice, but we can't afford. I didn't say you had to afford it, Logan interrupted, standing up. I have a ship docked at the spaceport with a decent medbay, not state-of-the-art, but good enough to stabilize him until we can reach a proper facility. Eric stared at him, disbelief warring with desperate hope. Why would you do that? You've already done more than enough. Logan's expression turned enigmatic. Let's just say I have my reasons. He glanced around the sparse dwelling pack. Whatever you need, we leave as soon as you're ready. As he stepped outside to give them privacy, Erixa turned to her father, who was watching her with knowing eyes. Be careful, daughter, he whispered. Humans are known for their kindness, but also for their complexity. There is always a reason behind their actions. Or nodded. But as she gathered their meager belongings, she couldn't help but wonder what Logan's true motives might be. One thing was certain: their lives had just taken an unexpected turn, and she wasn't sure where this path would lead outside. Logan gazed up at the darkening sky, the first stars beginning to appear. His commune beeped softly, and he checked the message that scrolled across its screen. His expression hardened momentarily before he composed himself, tucking the device away, just as Orxa emerged with her father supported between her and a makeshift crutch. Their gazes locked once more, and Logan felt something stir within him, something he hadn't felt in a very long time. With a slight smile, he moved to help them, unaware that this simple act of kindness was about to plunge them all into something far more complicated than a water dispute in a dusty marketplace. The journey through Drywell's winding streets toward the spaceport was tense but uneventful. Logan supported Oryx's father with practiced ease, his strong arms steady around the frail Hesperian's waist. The old man's breathing came in labored wheezes that worried Oryxa, but Logan's confident stride never faltered. Not much farther now, Logan assured them as they approached the spaceport's perimeter fence. My ship's in Bay 12, the Terran Spirit. She's not much to look at, but she's got heart. The spaceport was little more than a collection of landing pads surrounded by prefabricated structures, but compared to the rest of Drywell, it seemed almost luxurious. Security was minimal. A bore-looking Hesperian guard barely glanced at Logan's credentials before waving them through. You seem to know your way around here. Urza observed, her violet eyes studying Logan's profile in the dim light of the spaceport's illumination strips. Logan's lips quirked into that half-smile that made her heart flutter strangely. I've been to worse hellholes. No offense to your home world, none taken, she replied with a small laugh. It's a dust ball. As you said, they rounded a corner and Logan's ship came into view. The Terran Spirit was indeed unimpressive at first glance, a midsize transport vessel with visible patch repairs and mismatched hull plating, but Erixa could see the care that had gone into those repairs, the attention to detail that spoke of a pilot who loved his ship. Home sweet home, Logan murmured, pressing his palm against the scanner beside the loading ramp. The ramp descended with a hydraulic hiss, revealing a surprisingly clean and well-maintained interior. Logan guided them inside, the lighting automatically adjusting to a comfortable level as they entered. Med bays this way, he said, leading them down a narrow corridor. It's not fancy, but it'll do for now. The medical facility was small, but equipped with technology far beyond anything available in Drywell. Logan helped his father onto the examination table, which immediately began scanning his vital signs. I'll get him stabilized, Logan said, moving with practiced efficiency around the medbay. Why don't you get cleaned up? Crew quarters are 2 doors down on the left. There's a shower and fresh clothes waters. Recycled, so use as much as you need. Erica hesitated, reluctant to leave her father. Go, the old man urged weakly. I'm in good hands. After a moment's consideration, she nodded and slipped out of the medbay. The concept of using water freely for something Frivolous as washing was almost incomprehensible after a lifetime of rationing every drop the crew quarters were sparse but comfortable, with 2 bunks built into the wall and a small refresher unit in the corner. Erica approached the shower with reverence, her fingers trembling as she activated the water flow. The sensation of clean water cascading over her body was nothing short of miraculous. She watched mesmerized as years of dust and grime swirled down the drain. For the first time in memory, she felt truly clean. Among the supplies, she found a simple jumpsuit that was too large, but infinitely cleaner than her tattered garments. She rolled up the sleeves and pant legs, cinching the waist with a length of cord. When she returned to the medbay, her father was sleeping peacefully, an oxygen mask covering his face and various monitors tracking his condition. Logan stood nearby, studying a holographic display of the old man's lungs. "How is he?" she asked softly. Logan turned, and for a moment he simply stared at her. The grime and dust had hidden much of her natural beauty, and now clean and refreshed, she was stunning. Her emerald skin glowed with health, and her silver hair, still damp from the shower, hung in loose waves around her face. "He's stable," Logan said, clearing his throat. "The treatment's working. His oxygen levels are improving already." "Thank you," Erica said, moving closer, "for everything. I don't know how we'll ever repay you." Logan waved away her gratitude. "Don't worry about it. Let's just focus on getting him better." A comfortable silence fell between them as they watched the steady rise and fall of her father's chest. Orixa was acutely aware of Logan's presence beside her, the warmth radiating from his body, the subtle scent of him that was unlike anything she'd encountered before. Human, but not unpleasantly. "So you should rest too," Logan said eventually. "You've had a rough day." "I'm not tired," she replied, though it wasn't entirely true. "Tell me about yourself. Why is a human ex-military captain playing good Samaritan on Hesper 7? Logan's expression turned guarded. "It's a long story. We seem to have time," she countered, gesturing to her sleeping father before Logan could respond. A harsh buzzing sound filled the ship, accompanied by flashing red lights. "Proximity alert," Logan muttered suddenly. "All business." He moved swiftly to a console near the medbay door, pulling up his security feet. Eric's appeared over his shoulder and felt her blood run cold. A group of 6 armed figures was approaching the ship, led by a tall, imposing Hesperian in elaborate water baron regalia. But it was Logan's reaction that truly alarmed her. His entire body had tensed, his jaw clenched tight. "Damn it," he hissed. "They found me faster than I expected." "Who are they?" Arya asked, though she already suspected the answer. "Water barons," Logan confirmed grimly, or more specifically, Baron Hydrus and his enforcers, the most powerful water baron on Hesper 7. Erica whispered, dread pooling in her stomach. "What do they want with you?" Logan's eyes met hers, and for the first time she saw uncertainty there. "Let's just say I've crossed paths with Hydrus before on another desert world. It didn't end well for his operation." Understanding dawned on Orixa. "You're the water breaker," she breathed, recognition flooding her features. "The human who led the uprising on Paraxis 4. You broke the water monopoly and freed the aquifers for the people." A hero to some, a terrorist to others, the water breaker was a legend throughout the arid worlds of the sector, a figure who had become a symbol of resistance against the exploitation of water resources. Logan's silence was confirmation enough. "They'll kill you," Erica said, her voice barely audible. "Probably," Logan agreed with grim humor, "but not without a fight." He moved to a storage locker, retrieving a compact pulse rifle and checking its charge. "Stay here with your father. Lock the medbay door behind me." As he turned to leave, Orixa caught his arm. The contact sent an unexpected jolt through both of them, and their eyes locked. Something unspoken passed between them, a connection that transcended their brief acquaintance. "Be careful," she said softly. Logan's expression softened, and for a moment he seemed about to say something more. Instead, he simply nodded and headed for the ship's exit. Orixa watched him go, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and something else. Something she wasn't ready to name. She locked the medbay door as instructed, then turned to her father who had awakened during the commotion. That human, the old man said weakly. He carries the weight of many worlds on his shoulders. He saved us, Orxa replied simply. Her father's knowing gaze seemed to see right through her, and you feel something for him already, or couldn't deny it despite the brevity of their acquaintance. Logan had awakened feelings in her that she'd never experienced before, a pull that defied logic or explanation. It doesn't matter, she said, trying to sound practical. We barely know each other, and now he's facing death because of us. Not because of us, her father corrected gently, because of who he is, a man who stands against injustice, even when it would be easier to look away. He paused, his breathing labored despite the oxygen. Such men are rare, daughter, on any world. Outside, they heard the first sounds of confrontation, voices raised in anger, followed by the distinctive whine of charging weapons. Orxa moved to the medbay's small viewport, watching as Logan stood alone at the base of the Terran Spirit's ramp, facing down 6 armed men, and their leader even outnumbered. He stood tall and unafraid, embodying everything the legend said about the water breaker. In that moment, Orxa knew her father was right. Whatever happened next, her life had been irrevocably changed by this human who had dared to stand against the cruel laws of her world and was now preparing to face the consequences of his compassion. Eric's fingers flew across the ship's console, searching desperately for something, anything that might help Logan against the overwhelming odds. Outside, her father watched from his medbay bed, his breathing steadier, but his expression troubled. Second weapons locker, he said suddenly, his voice stronger than it had been in days. Behind the panel marked with the Earth symbol. Erica froze, turning to stare at her father. How do you know that? A ghost of a smile crossed the old Hesperian's face. Because I helped install it, child, 23 years ago, when this ship had a different name and a different captain. You what? There's no time, he urged. The panel in the quarter, the one with the blue circle and white land mass, Earth's symbol moving on instinct. Orxa rushed to the quarter and found the panel her father had described. It slid open at her touch, revealing a compact weapons locker containing a sleek pulse rifle and what appeared to be grenades. Father, how did you? The ship rocked suddenly as something impacted against the hull. Through the viewport, she could see Logan diving for cover as energy blasts scorched the ground where he had stood. He returned fire, his movements precise and efficient, but he was hopelessly outnumbered. Grabbing the pulse rifle, Ericsa made a decision. She hit the external comms button on the wall panel. Baron Hydrus, her voice echoed across the landing pad. This is Ericsa, daughter of Narin, the Waterfinder. I request parley under the ancient laws of Hesper 7. The firing stopped abruptly outside. Baron Hydrus, a tall, imposing Hesperian with elaborate facial tattoos denoting his water wealth, raised a hand to halt his men. The Waterfinder, his voice carried easily through the ship's external microphones. Narin lives, he does. And Ursa confirmed, and he has information about the great deep, the underground ocean of Hesperian legend. It was a desperate gamble. The great deep was a myth, a story told to children, a vast underground ocean that could sustain all of Hesper's 7, if only it could be found. But it was enough to make Hydrus hesitate. Let the human go, she continued, and my father will share what he knows. Logan's head snapped up, his eyes finding the ship's external camera. With uncanny accuracy, his expression was a mixture of confusion and warning. Baron Hydrus laughed, the sound like gravel underfoot. You expect me to believe the Waterfinder would share the location of the great deep after keeping it secret for all these years? My father is dying, Erica said, the truth lending weight to her words. What use is a secret to a dead man? But he will only speak if the human lives. A tense silence followed. Rexa held her breath, the pulse rifle heavy in her hands. Very well, Hydra said finally, the human may live for now. Bring the Waterfinder out, and we will talk. Erica released the comms button and rushed back to the med bay, where her father was already attempting to stand father. What are you doing? You're not strong enough. I'm stronger than I've been in months. Thanks to your human friend, Naren replied, removing his oxygen mask. And it's time you knew the truth. What truth? Father, what's going on? Naren's violet eyes, so like her own, held a mixture of regret and determination. Logan didn't find us by accident, child. He came to Hesper 7, looking for me for us. What, why? Because I was once like him, a freedom fighter. The water barons call him the water breaker. But before him, I was known as the water finder, not just because I could locate aquifers, but because I helped free water resources on 3 different worlds. Erixa stared at her father, struggling to reconcile this revelation with the quiet, cautious man who had raised her. I retired when your mother died, Naren continued. Came back to Hesper 7 to raise you in peace. But the fight never ended, and now Logan needs my help, needs our help to find the Great Deep. The Great Deep is real, Erica whispered, stunned. As real as you. And I, Naren confirmed. I found evidence of it during my last expedition before the cave-in. It's why I was targeted. The water barons couldn't let that knowledge spread. The ship's door hissed open, and Logan backed inside, his pulse rifle still trained on the figures outside. What the hell was that about? He demanded as the door sealed behind him. His eyes widened when he saw Naren standing. You should be resting. There's no time for rest, water breaker, Naren said, using Logan's infamous title with a hint of amusement. It seems we have much to discuss with each other, and with Baron Hydrus. Logan's gaze shifted between father and daughter, understanding dawning in his eyes. You knew who I was all along, just as you knew who I was, Naren encountered. Why else would the legendary water breaker intervene when my daughter was about to lose her hand over a flask of water? A flush crept up Logan's neck. That wasn't I didn't, he sighed, running a hand through his short hair. All right, yes, I came to Hesper 7, looking for you, Naren. The Coalition needs your expertise, but what happened in the marketplace was pure coincidence. I had no idea was your daughter until I saw her eyes, the same as yours in the old hollows. His gaze shifted to area, softening. I would have helped regardless. No one deserves to lose a hand over water. Something in his tone made Erix's heart flutter. She believed him. This wasn't just about her father or some mission. Logan had acted out of genuine compassion. So you need my father for this coalition of yours? She asked, trying to focus on the matter at hand. The coalition of free worlds, Logan confirmed. We're fighting against corporate water monopolies across the sector. Your father's skills as a water finder are legendary, but it's his knowledge of the Great Deep that we really need. If it exists, Naren interrupted, and Baron Hydrus knows. I found evidence of it. That's why he's here, not just for you, water breaker, but for me. Logan's expression hardened. Then we need to leave now before the ship's proximity alert blared again, this time more urgently. Too late, Logan muttered, checking the external cameras. A Hydrus has called for reinforcements. We're surrounded. Area moved to stand beside him, close enough that their arms brushed. The contact sent a jolt of awareness through her that had nothing to do with their dire situation. Then we negotiate, she said firmly, from a position of strength. Logan looked at her with newfound respect, and something else, something that made her emerald skin flush a deeper shade of green. And what position of strength would that be? Exactly, Lear, he asked, his voice lower, almost intimate despite the circumstances. Erica held up the pulse rifle she'd retrieved from the hidden weapons locker. This one plus whatever else my father and I know about the Great Deep that Hydrus doesn't. Logan's eyebrows shot up. Where did you get that? My father helped install your ship's hidden weapons locker. Apparently he and I have a lot to catch up on. She gave him a pointed look. Just as you and I do. The tension between them shifted, charged with something beyond the danger outside. For a moment, they simply stared at each other. They are thick with unspoken possibilities. Naren cleared his throat, breaking the moment. If we're going to negotiate with Hydrus, we should do it properly with a plan. Logan nodded reluctantly, tearing his gaze from Maria. You're right, and I think I have one, but it's risky, and it depends on how much. You really know about the Great Deep enough to make Hydrus listen. Naren assured him enough to buy us time. For what area? Asked. Logan's lips curved into that half smile that did strange things to her insides. Time to turn the tables, because if the Great Deep exists, it doesn't just change things for Hesper 7, it changes everything for the entire sector. As they huddled together to formulate their plan, Erixa couldn't help but notice how naturally she and Logan moved in sync, anticipating each other's thoughts almost before they were spoken. It was as if they'd known each other for years rather than hours, and when their hands accidentally touched while examining a map of Hesper 7's underground systems, neither pulled away immediately. Instead, their fingers lingered, a silent acknowledgement of the connection forming between them, a connection that transcended their different species, and the danger surrounding them. The negotiation with Baron Hydrus took place on neutral ground, a small dilapidated cantina at the edge of the spaceport. Logan insisted on these terms, refusing to leave the Terran's spirit vulnerable or put Naren at risk. In Hydrus's territory, the Baron arrived with 4 guards, their weapons visible, but lowered. Logan came with Orixa at his side, her pulse rifle slung casually over her shoulder. Naren followed behind them, walking steadily, but still showing signs of his illness. The Waterfinder, Hydrus said, his voice carrying a grudging respect as he inclined his head toward Naren. I believed you dead after the cave-in. Many did, Naren replied evenly. It served my purposes to let them think so. Hydrus' gaze shifted to Erica, then to Logan. Strange company you keep these days, a thief and the water breaker. My daughter is no thief, Naren said sharply, and the humans saved her life. That earns him my gratitude. They settled at a table in the back, away from the few patrons who quickly made themselves scarce when the water baron entered. A server brought drinks, actual water display of Hydrus's wealth and power. You claim to have found the Great Deep, Hydra said, getting straight to business. Prove it. Naren pulled out a small data crystal. Seismic readings from my last expedition. They show a massive cavity, approximately 2 km beneath a scarlet mesa, too large and too deep to be a standard aquifer. Hydrus took the crystal, examining it with narrowed eyes. This could be falsified, it could. Naren agreed, but why would I bother? I'm dying, Baron. The dust in my lungs will kill me within months. Even with treatment, I have no reason to lie. What do you want in exchange for the location? Hydrus asked bluntly. Logan leaned forward. Safe passage off Hesper 7 for all 3 of us, and your word that when, if you find the Great Deep, it will be shared with all of Hesper 7's people. Not hoarded or controlled. Hydrus laughed, a harsh sound like stones grinding together. You ask too much. Waterbreaker, the Great Deep, if it exists, would make its controller the most powerful being in the sector. And what good is power if your people die of thirst? Area interjected. The Great Deep belongs to Hesper 7, not to any one person. Her passion surprised even herself. Until today, she had never thought beyond survival, beyond the next drop of water for her father. Now she was arguing water politics with the most powerful baron on the planet. Hydra studied her with new interest. You have your father's fire, he observed, and his naivety. He turned back to Naren. I will give you safe passage, but the Great Deep will be controlled as I see fit. Then we have nothing more to discuss, Logan said, starting to rise. Wait, Naren said, placing a restraining hand on Logan's arm. Baron, I propose a compromise. I will lead you to the approximate location of the Great Deep. If you find it, you establish the infrastructure to access it, but you distribute the water fairly at reasonable rates, and you'll still profit enormously, but people won't die of thirst while you hoard water. Hydrus considered this, his fingers tapping rhythmically on the table. And how would I know you're not leading me on a fool's errand or into a trap? Because I'll stay behind as your hostage, Naren said calmly, while Logan and Orxa verify the location. Father, no. Oryxa protested it's the only way. Naren insisted the Baron needs assurance, and you need protection. He looked meaningfully at Logan. The human will keep you safe while you use your gift. My gift area, repeated confused Naren. Smiled gently. Why do you think I named you in the old tongue? It means a she who finds water. You have my ability, child. You've always had it, you just never knew how to use it. Arya stared at her father in disbelief. I don't understand. You will. Naren assured her, when you're in the caves, beneath the Scarlet Mesa, you'll feel it, the pull of water, the song it sings through stone. Hydrus looked skeptical. You expect me to trust the word of an untested girl? Not just any girl, Naren said firmly. My daughter, a Waterfinder by blood and by name. The negotiation continued for another hour, hammering out details. Eventually, a tentative agreement was reached. Naren would remain with Hydrus, while Logan and Erexa ventured to the Scarlet Mesa to verify the Great Deep's location. If they found evidence of it, they would return with proof, and all three would be granted safe passage off-world after helping establish initial access to the underground ocean. As they left the cantina, Erexa pulled her father aside. I can't leave you with him, she whispered. Fiercely, you must, Naren replied. And you must find the Great Deep. It's our only leverage, but I don't know how to use this gift you claim I have. You will, he said with quiet confidence. Trust yourself, trust Logan. He knows more about our people's water sensing abilities than you might expect. Before she could question this cryptic statement, Hydrus's guards escorted Naren away. Oryxa watched helplessly as her father was led to the Baron's luxurious transport. He'll be safe, Logan said, coming to stand beside her. Hydrus needs him alive. For now, Oryxa said. Bitterly, they returned to the Terran spirit in silence. Once inside, Logan immediately began preparations for their expedition, gathering supplies and equipment with practice efficiency. Area watched him, still processing everything that had happened. Did you know? She finally asked about my supposed ability. Logan paused, a water recycler in his hands. I suspected the genetic markers for water sensing are strong in your people, and Naren was the strongest Waterfinder ever documented, so that's why you really helped me in the marketplace, she said, unable to keep the